Good morning, everybody. Good morning to all of you who are here with us at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and good morning to all of you joining us online. I'm Yaron, as you all know, president of Piano Cleveland, and we're thrilled to have you today for the jury roundtable, in which we're going to get to know our jurors a little bit. And I'm thrilled to have our 4 jurors who are here in Cleveland with us today. Unfortunately, 4 other jurors are in different locations worldwide, so they won't be joining us, but we'll hear a lot of wonderful and interesting information from our 4 wonderful jury members here. I would just like to mention that we are going to allow you to ask questions. We're going to leave a little bit time at the end to ask questions. We kindly ask that these questions are not related directly to any contestant in the competition. The reason for this is because this is a process which is still going on, and we would like to stay as objective as possible, so not get into that. So we're going to go more into sort of like general questions. Okay, so if you have any questions, those of you at home, please email us to info@pianocleveland.org. And we have our executive director here, Marissa Moore, who is going to pass all these questions to us, and we're going to do our best to answer whatever we can. Of course, we have some kind of time limitation, but in case you have any interesting questions, please feel free. So
Can you repeat that email again?
Oh, that email is info@pianocleveland.org. So please submit your questions to that email. All right, so I think now it's time to, first of all, let's start with a quick introduction of our jury members. So we are going to ask our kind jurors to just mention their names, a title, for example, if they are professors somewhere or concert pianists, or we even have an artist manager here, and a little bit about their experience as jury members here and in general. So we're going to start with our jury chairwoman, Margarita Shevchenko.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. So I come from Russia originally. I moved to the United States in the beginning of 90s, and actually I was a student right here at CIM for my artist diploma for 2 years. I studied with Sergei Babayan. So since then I've been performing, doing competitions, concert tours. Then I taught here in Cleveland for 6 years on the faculty. And then I moved to Florida, and right now I'm an associate professor of the Michigan State University College of Music.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Now we have Michelle Cann.
Thank you. Again, it's really, really wonderful to be here, and to also parallel, as Margarita mentioned, I was also a student at the Cleveland Institute of Music. When I was a student, you were actually a professor there around that time. And I grew up in Florida. So now she's living in Florida. That's where I grew up. See, I'm noticing all these parallels now, Florida, Cleveland. But I grew up in Florida near Orlando. And then I came to study my bachelor's and master's degree at Cleveland Institute, just down the road. I was actually studying with Paul Shenley and Daniel Shapiro during that time. But one thing really unique about Cleveland, which really is unique, is the relationship amongst the professors there. There was such really great camaraderie amongst the professors, so that as students, you could play for other teachers very easily if you wanted to. And that was really special because I played for Sergei Babayan, who was your teacher, many times and got great advice, and Catherine Brown, who was there, Antonio Pampabaldi. That was a very special thing for as I studied.
I also played for Paul Shenley.
You did, right? Yeah. That's actually very unique for a lot of conservatories. So
yes.
That was pretty wonderful. And from there, I went to Philadelphia to study at the Curtis Institute of Music. I got an artist diploma degree there with Robert McDonald. And so, between that time, I've always been involved in a lot of different things, and to sort of list them in a short way, I did collaborative piano work. I do a lot of chamber music and collaborative playing, and I was on staff at Curtis for many years as a collaborative pianist. And I'm also a music director and have directed choirs before, for children choirs in Philadelphia, also directed at churches and such, and still do right now. And so I just like to have a lot going on, I suppose, teaching and also performing. And so now currently I was just this past year, I was brought on to the Curtis Institute faculty, and I'm the Eleanor Sokoloff Chair of Piano Studies, one of the professors at Curtis now. So it's just great to be back.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here, Michelle. Thank you very much. Now, Linda Petríková.
Thank you, Yaron, for having me here at this competition. Very nice to be here. I'm an artist manager. I work at a global artist management company, IMG Artists, and I've been there for over a decade now. I have a roster of pianists, violinists, string quartets, conductors, and one singer. And I'm a former concert pianist, because now I prefer to judge others and listen to others play. I am originally from Czech Republic. I moved to New York 13 years ago, and I've lived in New York since. And I love music, and it's been a wonderful experience so far, being here and listening to the wonderful pianists. So once again, thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you, Linda. Nimrod David Pfeffer.
Hi, I'm Nimrod in Hebrew, originally from Israel, where I know Yaron since we were teenagers, just like pretty much every young musician in Israel. And I've been living in New York for the last 14 years. I'm a pianist and a conductor. The conductor aspect happened more recently, about 7 years ago. And now I'm a conductor at the Metropolitan Opera, on the music stuff there in New York, and music director of the Guatemala National Opera. And my life until COVID has been busy with conducting and playing. And then I think, like most of us, there has been a year and a half of reflection and study. And in my case, also travel, which was nice. And now things are getting back, seems to get back into business. And I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time in Cleveland, my first time judging a competition. So that's exciting, and I can relate very much to the people who are performing, because I was in that role until very recently. So I feel for them, and everybody there's so many wonderful talents. Everybody's a wonderful talent here. So it's wonderful to be here and to listen to it and try to assess along with my colleagues here.
Nimrod, a pleasure to have you, as it is to have all of you here. So let's start with a couple of very general questions. If maybe each one of you could answer just a relatively short answer. I would like to ask you, first of all, about your experience judging, let's say, in the first 2 rounds, as they're already finished. As jury members, of course, as we had 2 opportunities to listen to each one of the contestants. How easy was it for you to make your decision about who are your people who selected? How many times did you have to change your mind or maybe hear something different throughout their performances? Margarita.
Well, in my case, I would say probably it was not a difficult decision, because they performed 2 rounds, and this is a considerable amount of music and variety of different composers. So you can pretty much make up your opinion about a contestant based on that. So what I'm trying to say is just it's an extended repertoire that we are judging on. So I think it was very helpful to have the recordings, so with the good quality recordings that represent each contestant. And I think a good idea was also having 2 rounds instead of 1 for evaluation, just to get more impression of each contestant. So to me, it was not a difficult decision. However, when I judge, I compare everybody between each other. So my opinion was changing as I was listening to more people. So I would kind of put them in order as I would my preference order. So, and that would change because, of course, the more people you listen to, the difference is there. So, yes, but I think it was very, very, valuable and positive experience.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Michelle?
It's a great response. I did find it a little more difficult. I will say, on some level, and I think it's always like this, we had 26 people that we were listening to, and we had to break it down to 8. And that is a significant, number there. I do agree that as you listen, obviously, the more you're hearing and the more pianists you hear, of course, things change and preferences and all that kind of stuff is going to change as you hear more repertoire and such. But for me, what wasn't so difficult, which I think is typically the case, is like maybe who the top 4 were or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I felt that it was easier to identify those top, candidates for your personal, favorites or what you call it. But it's the last 4. It's those last couple of ones because we were supposed to, so that you know how it works, we're all going to pick 8 that we're putting forward. And obviously then it's going to be decided by all the judges. But the last couple of ones, that's where it became really difficult for me because, and especially even to the last 2, because I had to really go back and forth, to be honest. It was really nice having the recordings that's unique for 2 rounds and all of this that's at such high quality because you could listen again. You could have one question and, let me just check these 2 again or things like that. That was a possibility. But I just really had a hard time deciding on the last couple of ones because what it comes down to is when the talent is this high, you all have heard for yourself how high the talent is, and you'll continue to hear it. When we're at this level, it's really hard to judge in certain ways because, you're told, okay, you can pick 8, but what if you want to pick 12? What if you want to pick 10? Well, you can't. You have to pick 8, and that's the part that's difficult because there probably is another 2 or 3 that you'd love to, have an opportunity to go forward, right? But you can't do that. So it will come down to maybe the smallest things. So that to me is always, that was the most difficult. And I always find that difficult because, yeah.
And actually, I may just add that as we were doing the selection for the competition, selecting the 26 which are going to be part of this competition, we started with over 250 applicants from 26 countries. We had a group of preliminary jury that I was chairing, and that was a very tough choice. We worked days and nights trying to make our best assessment. And when you have such a big group and so many applicants, and really the general level was incredible, it was so difficult, really, to make that choice. And of course, sometimes when you have so many people, you may miss a couple of talents who are incredible and certainly deserve to be or may have done very well in the competition. We're certainly doing, I can just say that I think all of us are doing our best to do what we can. Linda.
I agree that the level was very high, and at the start it definitely wasn't obvious. And my opinion definitely evolved, and it was wonderful to have 2 rounds, and it was wonderful to have the range of repertoire that some of it was required. And I think that really, it just shows different qualities of each candidate and really brings out what it is that makes them stand out. If you hear them in a Haydn sonata, and then you hear them in a contemporary piece, and then you hear them in a Chopin etude that all of them had to play. I think it's wonderful that this competition has these rules that you have to play classical repertoire, not only dazzle the judges with what you know best. So, but my opinion definitely evolved as I progressed to the second round and heard all the candidates play different styles and different periods.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Not easy at all, for sure.
Certainly not. Nimrod?
I found it very interesting. Of course, judging something like that, judging an artistry of an artist is not, it's not something you can really, I mean, you're obliged to put numbers to it, but it has so much to do with personal taste. It has to do with I mean, it's just impossible to do. I found it different depending on the artist that I was listening to. There were a few people that it was very clear from the beginning what kind of artist I'm listening to. And they were kind of solid throughout the two stages in terms of presenting their artistry. Some surprised me in the beginning, and then, or surprised me in the second round because they had kind of different strengths. And there is nothing wrong or bad about it. They're great artists, maybe the greatest artists that are very well known for a certain kind of interpretation, a certain kind of link to a composer or a style, and something else might not be in their veins. And then comes also my personal responsibility of what is the philosophy of what I'm choosing for, what I'm voting for. For example, if I would like to hear somebody who plays really an amazing performance of, let's say, I don't know, Chopin, and which is very difficult to do. It takes a certain feeling towards that composer, and maybe will not be as convincing about something else. Or do I choose somebody who will be very solid with all the choices? Or if there are several competitors who are kind of similar in style of playing, similar, you know, and then there is a different competitor who is, if I would just hear two competitors, maybe that competitor would not impress me as much, but he brings a completely different set of interest to the group. My personal philosophy has been that I just need to judge based on individual talent and not think about those kind of things, because it's not fair if there are two people who are close together in style or feeling, that one of them will suffer because the other one maybe was slightly better, in my opinion. But those things are difficult because we, the judges, are also only humans, and impression is something that is hard to put a number on. So it was very interesting. And I would say that definitely the fact that there was a second round gave, at times really made the difference for me with the decision of who I'd like to bring forward.
Thank you very much, Nimrod. I'm just reminding our audience at home that you are able to send questions to the jury members at info@pianocleveland.org. This is the email you should be emailing to if you have any questions for the jury members. We're going to have one more question for all of you in general, and this is a little bit a question about repertoire and building a repertoire for the competition. So we had some guidelines for repertoire. We included a classical sonata in the early round and an etude, and then in the semifinal round, which you're all hearing now, they have to include a piece by Chopin, Brahms, Schumann, or Schubert, and of course the transcription as well, and the two piano round. But we do allow quite a lot of flexibility in selecting the actual pieces, in adding their own kind of pieces. And I want to hear maybe a little bit from your perspective. What is for you a great choice of repertoire? And how important is it when you're making your assessments? So, Linda, let's start with you.
I think each candidate has to choose the repertoire that they feel most at home at. That's where they're going to show their strengths. Of course, they have the requirements and they have to do their best, but you have to choose pieces that you think that you have something to say that maybe others don't, and that's what will make you stand out. in a competition like this, where that's an incredible competition when you have very high quality candidates and everybody's competing against each other. So I think you have to really look inward and say, okay, these are the pieces that are closest to my heart, or that I think I have something to say that's unique, that stands out.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Well said, very well said. I think to piggyback off what you said, and then on another side of it, it is extremely important. You know, the inverse of that is you'll see candidates that they try to pick what they think will win. You know, and that's an interesting point too, is that, you know, there's candidates that may study different competitions, they may look at, you know, what the winners played, you know what I mean, and things like this, and they're trying to turn it into an equation of some kind that says, you know, I must do this, and then this piece, and this is what's gonna help me win. Well, the thing that they're forgetting is exactly what you said, is that whoever may have won that competition that you were studying, that played those pieces, they were probably, it was very dear to them. They really owned those pieces. So it's absolutely true that when it comes to repertoire, you do have to make sure it's something, there are things that you can own them, that they're something that you can say through the performance of that piece that is going to be unique to you. And if it means that you're not doing, you know, the most difficult piece ever written for piano, right? Then it's okay, because the question is, you can play the most difficult piece ever written for piano and play it horribly or not convincingly, and that completely, you know, ruins your chance. So it is important that it works for you. On another side of that, though, I think that it's important, because I have seen it go in a certain way where people stay in their comfort zone completely. And that, of course, is why it's helpful when a competition requires things, right? That's why I do agree with that, that there should be, you should have to get out of your comfort zone. Obviously, we're seeing in these rounds that's happening, you know, with the transcription of the popular songs and playing together, right? I like that that exists, because it is important that you're pushed. And to me, Nimrod mentioned this earlier, which is a really valid point, right? When you look at different pianists and their careers that have big careers, it's true that at a certain point, you may see that a particular pianist, you know that pianist for this type of music. Like maybe like you go to them to hear Beethoven, right? And that, you know, their interpretation is the best to you. Like it is true that sometimes people will eventually stay kind of in a certain comfort zone. But at the same time, I feel that on the road to, you know, to success and things like that, and especially as we look forward in this age and time, I think that it is important that a pianist can show through their playing and through their personality, like different types of styles. You know what I mean? I think as much as it's great to have that composer or that piece that you really shine, it's also important to be able to come outside of a box. And for me, that's what I look for, because I'm really interested first if you can impress me with that piece that you obviously picked. We all know that. You can usually hear it, and you know this one, they really, and that's great. So now you have my attention. But the question is, can you keep my attention? And for me, in something so competitive as this, I'm really going to be impressed when I see that when you were forced a little bit to go outside of your box, how did you handle that? And to me, that's like telling me a lot about you as a whole artist, you know? And creating these careers, it's a competitive world, you know? And that's what this competition is about, right? As you know, that's been mentioned to us even as judges, to remember that the winner of this competition, we're looking at an international career for them. And so, you know, what kind of artist are you? What kind of artist do you have to be moving forward in order to fill that role, in order to become relevant and stay relevant in this world, you know? And so I think it's good. I think it's good that you're pushing them outside of the box.
Well, thank you very much. This is exactly the reason we're doing all these funny things with the two pianos and this repertoire. So thank you very much for your words. Margarita.
Yes, I completely agree with Michelle and my colleagues. So that, first of all, competition is something that we do to reveal the real talent. And not only that, but also see a well-rounded musician. So when I talk about this, I mean a person who can be at home in every repertoire they play. I mean, of course, there are differences and strengths of different artists, pianists. So during the competition, I think it's very important to have a well-balanced programs and requirements for contestants to play at least one work of each period. But at the same time, I think it's very important to give them a chance to shine in something that they do the best in terms of repertoire. And I think every contestant needs to take advantage of that opportunity and really find, because competition program is not a huge program, it's not 3 hours, it's not 5 hours. So you have to be really selective to show your best side in your program, maybe to find that piece that brought you success or made a big impression on audiences in your concerts, or just, had nice reviews. And so that's very important, because when I look at a candidate during the competition, I need to see that part. I need to see their side that makes them special in comparison to others. It can be Baroque style, somebody who plays excellent Bach suite, or it can be somebody who plays romantic music in a special way. So, but I think it's very important when you enter the competition, you need to make that choice for yourself and have that piece that makes you stand out, or a number of pieces. And I agree with Michelle when we talk about challenges and competitiveness of our careers in music. In the competition, really, I would be very interested in following how each competitor adapts to new rules of the competitions, of this particular competition, because it shows their flexibility and their mobility and ability to adjust to new environment, as if you will. So, because the competitions nowadays are not the same as 50 years ago. So, and it involves a lot of different things, and how reactive you are, how well you can adjust, adapt to all of these things, really important. For somebody who is not afraid of changes and who is really curious and willing to take on these, challenges and start a new journey. So that's what I think. But at the same time, having great traditions and strength in the basic traditional repertoire is very important too.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Margarita. Nimrod.
It's an interesting question, and the responses are interesting. I relate to many of them, and some I think a little bit differently. And it's interesting, I think, for the whole process of our judging together. As I said, it's the first time I'm judging a competition. And this competition is unique in many ways because it allows a lot of freedom on one hand. And on the other hand, there are things like the wonderful arrangements that we heard of more popular music. The beautiful thing for me, especially here, is because we had a hybrid competition in which much of the selection has been done before online, we kind of come and listen to piano recitals. There's pretty much 2 hours of music that we listen to in the evening or in the afternoon. I have a very fresh mind when I come to hear it, because I'm not after a full day of listening to competitors. And what I'm listening to is really an artist that brings me to the artist's world. Of course, because, for example, we would hear an arrangement of a contemporary piece, it wouldn't make sense to play the 3 late Beethoven sonatas and then Bohemian Rhapsody, right? There needs to be some kind of the programming has to make sense by itself. And that's another delicate and subtle thing about the artistry of the artist, because the programming of half a recital, in a way, has to feel like a piece of music. There is a composition to it. There needs to be a beginning, there needs to be a climax, and there needs to be some kind of release in the end. It could be in many ways. The climax could be soft, but there needs to be a journey. And I think that in a competition like this that allows freedom and also has those kind of interesting things in it, it would make sense in a competition like this to have kind of a tasting menu. If we think of when you go to a restaurant, if you would choose, a big dish or tastings. So something like that would make sense to me, but it also needs to be something that portrays the strengths of the competitor and allows me to be immersed in the world of the artist that I'm listening to, in whichever way it is. So I think the main, as I'm speaking, I think the main idea is not to think what other people would like to hear. But of course, that should be part of it, but it shouldn't be all of it. It should be, how do I present a musical journey that is diverse enough, but coherent enough for people to come along with me in that journey. So that's kind of my perspective.
Am I the only one to feel that we're very privileged to have such jury members here? Well, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for all your wonderful answers. Now we'll have just a little bit of different questions to each one of you, okay? And we're going to try to keep it relatively short just to also later allow more questions and questions from our audience. So we're going to start with you, Margarita. And you, of course, I'm sure that many of you remember Margarita's incredible performances, both here at this competition when she won first prize in 1995 in our first competition as the Cleveland International Piano Competition. And before that, of course, it was the Casadesu competition. So you mentioned that that for you it was relatively easy to find the ones that you prefer. So can you just, like, in a few words, say what is that you're looking for? And how was it? Like, what elements convinced you the most when you were hearing?
You mean in terms of competitors, when I was listening to the recordings?
Yes.
For me, if I'm interested in the performance of a candidate, if I see something that makes them stand out, it usually happens right away. So, and then there might be other works and other styles that I might not be feeling as strong about, but definitely if there is something that makes this competitor stand out, that's what I'm looking for. Because some people just play and they have a very, very solid, but all of them, all of the 26 competitors, they were very, very solid and very, for professional, all these wonderful words I could say. But what I'm in particular looking for is a special quality in certain repertoire, or just a personal quality that makes them stand out. Something that makes me listen to them at all times, something that keeps me interested, surprised, engaged. This is what I'm looking for. But at the same time, I, of course, appreciate a solid training that becomes obvious as they perform. Yes. So, but as Michelle mentioned about, like, it was really easy to see, top 4 or top 6. So it's very difficult, and I mean different from competitor to competitor. But what I remembered, my opinion kind of stayed the same from the beginning. If I really liked somebody, so that was consistent. I was not like surprised in a bad way in the future. So, and but of course, judging music is very subjective, and I agree that there are so many things come into play. It's your traditions and your school, everything is just your personal perception of that particular composer or music in general, or what kind of person are you? So in terms of, temperament and stuff like that. So it's just, many things come into play. But for me, again, I imagine myself being an audience member. So if I come to a concert of that person, am I staying engaged, interested, entertained in certain repertoire, so forth. So that's what matters. I'm just not putting myself in the shoes of a judge. I'm just an audience member that I'm enjoying performance.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Michelle, as another wonderful concert pianist, we have a few here with us, and can you please maybe share a little bit with the audience, what would be the major difference as a performer, performing in a concert or performing in such a competition?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I think that one obvious part of that is just the temperament of the performer themselves, right? I mean, in a way, if you can master the mental space and what's going on in your head, then actually you're doing really well. If you can do a competition and treat it as a performance in a concert hall, I think then you're already doing the right thing. So to me, right there, that's the biggest difference. It's the way that you perceive it, right? Because if you're coming on the stage in a competition such as this, you're well aware that you're being judged. You're well aware that judges are sitting out there or, whatever, watching you, that even the audience is judging you, or however you want to say it, because this is the point of this moment in time, right? Whereas when you come onto the concert stage, it's a different mental space. Yes, there's probably always, if you let yourself imagine it, someone judging you. But there's a different feeling when you come to give a concert, and that is that people are embracing you more. Because if you paid to come hear someone in a concert, you're in a positive mindset. You're excited to see what they're going to offer you. You're embracing the music. You want to be moved, as she mentioned. Put yourself as an audience member. You're there to be moved. Well, the truth is, that's exactly what actually is going on in the competition. It actually is no different. It's completely our own mental space that we have decided when we come out to play in a competition that those in the audience are not embracing us, that the judges are not embracing us, and that everybody is there like this, waiting for us to mess up. But it's a complete opposite. Again, you put it well. We are there to be moved, the judges and the audience. We are excited when you come on that stage to see what you have to offer of yourself. What are you going to do? When I look at the program for these, competitors, I'm always excited when I see a piece that I have not played or do not know. That's exciting too, because, okay, this is a little bit new to me, and you're new to me as well, so that's exciting. But on another level, when I see pieces that I know very well, that I've played many times, right? I don't want you to come on stage and play it the way somebody else has played it. Why am I here for that? I am excited that you are about to play this piece that I've heard so many times, and I cannot wait to see what will you bring that is inspiring to me. We're always learning, even as teachers, as judges, or whatever. We're always learning. Can you do something to this piece that makes me want to go back and play it again? And I'm so inspired that I want to try this differently because you brought something unique to the table. So I guess that's the one thing I would say, that they're not so different. They don't have to be. And the reason they are different is because of the way we perceive it, both as a performer and maybe some sitting out there. But ultimately, we all want the same thing, and that is to be moved, to have an experience that we will remember. As judges, to smile and just say, man, I really love Chopin. Like, you finish playing, it's like, this is why I just love Chopin. Like, we want that experience, like, more than anything else, that's what we want. And if the performer can remember this, they'll do well here and in the future, because, that's the winner we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that perceives it the exact same way, that when they go on, these finalists are gonna have to play with the Cleveland Orchestra, right? I recently played with them for the first time for me. It was just a couple of weeks ago. So I can imagine for some of these performers that have not played with them before. And I remember, to sort of finish this, before I went out there at Blossom, I was at Blossom, The audience was so huge at Blossom. I personally never played for such a big audience before, personally. I think it was like 9,000 people. And I looked out, and what went through my head when I walked on that stage for a moment was, oh my gosh, there are so many people here. And then I was like, and COVID just ended. I've been playing in my house. Like, I've had no audience. This is too many people. And then I'm like, this is the Cleveland Orchestra. And I remember, no one can see this, but this is absolutely what's going through my head. And it immediately had to be shut off. Because as soon as I shut it off, I said, that means nothing. I'm making music. You cannot take the setting that you're in and turn it into anything else but what it is that you're making music and you're trying to move those. Everybody that's there, I don't care if it's 2 people or 9,000, they all came to be moved. And if you understand that, then everybody's your friend. Sorry, I got very passionate. You asked me quite the question, because I really feel that way.
I think we can all really relate to that. And you know that because I've even been doing competition as a contestant until, like, I don't know, probably 11 years ago or something like that. And now I do a lot of juries and really it's amazing to see how different what you thought as a contestant is to what it is being a juror. Like what we've been like striving for as contestants, the set of mind that there was like, of the mind like of being a contestant, and then what you're looking for as a jury member. I mean, had I known it when I was a contestant, maybe it would have made my life easier. Linda, I would like to ask you a little bit, because you are coming also from the business aspect of classical music. Linda represents some wonderful artists, including the renowned pianist Yevgeny Kissin and Mari Peraya. And so you have a lot of experience really, not only, of course, understanding what these musicians do professionally, but how do you go out there and sell them, or for them to sell yourself. I would like to ask you, when you are making your assessments, how much of that plays a role?
I think, as Michel said, ultimately we all want the same thing. I don't think I'm looking at the pianist differently as a manager and as a judge and as an audience. We all want an excellent artist to be out there. And I think, of course, I'm here as a judge. I'm not here as a manager. That's my role. But I think I'm looking for exactly the same things that I would be looking for as a manager. And that's obviously, everybody knows how to play the piano. It's clear here. Everybody's put incredible number of hours, months, and years into playing what they're playing on stage here for a few minutes. They're all very accomplished. They all can go through the pieces very well. They all have some wonderful qualities. So I think what I'm looking for are those hours that they put in, those years that they put in, are they towards an understanding of the piece rather than just mastering it and impressing all of us with the piano technique. And I think that's you can really tell if somebody has thought about, what is the register of this piece? Why am I playing it this way? And it makes a world of a difference. When you see somebody sit down at the piano and from the first note, you can tell, okay, they're excellent, they're playing through it, or no, they've spent a lot of time thinking about what this piece is, where it's going, how is it, phrased as a whole, where is the climax, what was the period when this was composed, how was it, why was this pianist, this composer composing this phrase and that phrase. And I think that's what sets a great pianist apart, and all of the greatest ones have something like to say. And there are different things that they're looking for in a piece. Some pianists look for a story, some look for a character, and so that's fascinating. And we are all subjective, and we all want to hear something else. But when you hear something new and something, oh my God, this person really understands what they're playing, and I have never thought about this piece like this. That's what makes a great pianist, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Linda. Okay, a question to Nimrod. Before, I would just like to remind one last time that for you, audience at home, you can send us your questions for the jury members at info@pianocleveland.org. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to present all your questions, but Marissa is going to help us make a selection, and we are going to have a couple from the audience here and a couple from the audience at home. So now, a question to Nimrod. Nimrod, as you are a pianist who played many concertos and now also a conductor who knows the same pieces, the same concertos from the perspective of a conductor, what can you say that you will be looking for differently during the final round with the Cleveland Orchestra? And how important is it maybe for a contestant to be playing, to have the experience to play with the orchestra, to know the parts of the different orchestra members? Or what would it, maybe from your perspective, because you started off as a pianist and then continued to being a conductor, what do you see differently now from what maybe you thought of 10 years or 15 years ago?
It's a great question. What I see differently now, I'll start with the more general aspect of things. I mean, just like every musician, I myself grow. I'm a young musician, and my journey is my particular journey. And going into conducting, especially opera, brought a different perspective to my artistry, especially with certain composers like Mozart, who I used to play, piano sonatas, really, pretty much, and some concerti, and now I conduct all his major operas and symphonies and so on. It depends on the piece in terms of the concerto, but what I'd like to say is because in conducting, first of all, I like to play, because I can, because I'm a pianist, to play the pieces that I conduct anyway, even though in the end I'm not going to be physically making sounds, but just move my hands. But otherwise, one is forced to think, as you said, about the piece more than just, practice the physical aspect of it. And then there are other perspectives that come into play when one prepares a piece as a conductor. You think more of the character, what the composer meant to say to you. That's what I think about. The perspective of opera, in which you have, with a composer you knew very well, like Mozart, for example, now there is text married to the music. And that teaches you about what Mozart is striving for when he writes only music, because the text informs you about what are his choices, both in terms of the character and also how he constructs a musical phrase. You think of how to, a lot of times with orchestra, especially with certain repertoire, there is less room for very rapid and subtle changes of tempo, and usually that has to do more with the artistry of, if there is a soloist in the orchestra who plays at a certain point, the solo clarinet, and you have to concentrate more on large-scale contrasts of color and of color and articulation and so on. And you have to think a lot about balance. And that brings me to your question about in concerto specifically. It depends on the concerto. There are certain concerti, like the Mozart concerti, in which the piano is an integral part of the orchestral sound, right? You have, of course, it's a solo instrument, but a lot of times the piano just plays one line within the orchestral writing. There are other piano concertos that are more distinctly solo and accompaniment, or there is a certain discussion between the solo part and the orchestral answer and so on. So of course things change in terms of how you choose to play and also how you listen. I think in Chopin, for example, it could have been written without the orchestra, right? And many people play it without the orchestra or with string quartet. And the orchestra is really playing, when it's not playing the tutti parts that are between the solo parts, oftentimes it just plays kind of a pillow of one chord while the pianist is playing all the embellishments and so on. So those things are different. I think the most important things are a kind of stamina to have 70 people or how many people around you, and to be the soloist, and that is very different than playing in a chamber room. It takes a different kind of character of the artist, and also a different kind of experience. It takes understanding of what happens around you, the entirety of the piece, and not just one's part. And I think that is great in this competition, because people are playing also for hands, people are playing chamber music. Those things are very similar to playing with orchestra, only on a different scale. And you can see it already in those rounds. And there is an important aspect of balance, because both between the piano and the orchestra, there are certain choices that I would make if I play a solo piece that I can't make when I have, in terms of the colors that I want to do, when I have many people playing with me, and sometimes I play the top melody, and I cannot choose to play it in this certain kind of pianissimo that I would like when I'm doubled by an oboe an octave lower. Okay, so those things take a certain kind of listening that comes a lot with experience, and also just the balance between the piano part and the people around. So I think it's just a matter of experience and listening to the entirety of what's going on, rather than just our own part, I would say.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you very much, Nimrod. Now we're going to allow a little bit time for a couple of questions from our audience here, a couple of questions for our audience at home. We have about 20 more minutes, so we're going to try and make it relatively short. Who would like to ask? Okay, Laura, please.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just curious, you talk about listening to the different, the whole picture of these contestants. Do you also take in consideration, especially you, Linda, is that your name?
Linda.
Like, do they have charisma? Do they have a connection with the audience? Is their stage presence really great? Is that part of your judging too?
Yes, I think it all plays into our decisions as well. And you said the three things that are very important. The stage presence, some people just have it the minute they walk on stage. And there's something, okay, that you're engaged for some reason. And then, it might continue while they're playing, it might not. But that's definitely part of it. But I think what a lot of pianists forget is how important the connection with the audience is. You have to play for the audience. The music doesn't exist without that connection. And I think when you realize it, you start to play differently as well. And you have to, I think Nimrod brought this up already, you have to give the audience partially what they want as well. You can't just play for yourself. And I know that the greatest pianists always think about this as one of the most important things, like they're playing for the audience, and if the connection is not there, then. So it's very difficult to assess, of course, but I'm always trying to look for that as well, yes.
Like for a competition, if I see a musician that looks really, really nervous or doesn't smile at the end or just something that, it's like, well, if you didn't think your performance was any good, why should I, But I don't know if and they may have played fabulously,
No, but that's rule number one. Never make the audience
right?
see that you made a mistake.
Yeah.
All right. You just...
I'm going to ask one. Ooh, there we go. I'm going to ask one from our virtual audience. There was a question about how the perception about how a composer should be played. So
What should be played?
what? The question was about the perceptions around how particular composers should be played or not. So basically, what is that fine line between this is what Mozart should sound like and I am making Mozart my own?
Great question. Who wants to answer?
Well, I can answer. We live in a completely different century right now, of course, from the century Mozart lived in. So our perception of Mozart's music has gone through changes over the centuries. You know, what it was used to be even 100 years ago, probably it was received in a different way. So because there's so many great interpretations that we are, you know, educated on. So like Vladimir Horowitz or, you know, Murray Pariah. So they all play Mozart in very different ways. So there is impossible to find two musicians that play Mozart the same way. But even then, you know, there's some more innovative approach, like I would say Vladimir Horowitz plays Mozart. Some people might say more conservative. They would say, oh, no, this is not the way to play Mozart. You know, he takes too much time, or he does, you know, almost like romantic things. But when you look at the same Mozart sonata, different perspective. So what do you think about when he plays? What are the reflection of this music you get when he performs? I think that's what matters, because it's impossible to perform Mozart the same way it was performed centuries ago. So it's like evolution, it evolves. So when I hear Mozart performance, of course I cannot kind of differentiate just that particular performance. Without my will, I start comparing this performance to all the great interpretations of that music. And if this performance brings something extra to my knowledge and understanding and my experience with this music, that's really valuable.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to understand the process of the judging a little bit better. You each come to, come together with your list of 8, I presume. And
I'm sorry, we're not allowed to talk about our voting process. So.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize because it's, yeah, these are things that we keep. Thank you. I can just say one thing. The jury is not allowed to speak to each other about the contestants. We do it totally because we would like to keep for everybody to have their own opinion and not to be influenced by anybody else. So I can just tell you that sometimes the jury does not know the results until, of course, after we bring our votes and numbers together and we present it to them. So sometimes juries just in different competitions can actually be very surprised by the results. We bring everything together, but for us, and this is different in different competitions, for us, we don't allow the jurors to speak to each other about the contestants until the competition is over, because we would like each one of, I mean, we selected these wonderful jury members because we believe that they have a great judgment for their own to select their preference. And this is also why we select such a diverse group of people, okay? About the specific voting process, unfortunately, we cannot share more. Perfect, thank you very much.
You may not be able to answer this either because, I mean, this whole process is subjective with the judges. There's no checklist or anything that, you know, like we're watching the Olympics now and they get a score for how difficult their performance was, or you know, in difficulty or something. It's just all based on. I think Nimrod started it when he said in his opening remark, it's personal, kind of a personal, whatever your experiences have been. There's no list or anything that you can check off.
I can actually answer that in a general way.
Michelle, yes.
You're absolutely right. The reason, and that's why it's important, like a competition like that, there's a reason why there's 8 of us, right? It's because of the fact that, as Yaron mentioned, we're all very different people and, you know, different human beings, first of all, but different kind of musicians, right? And we have a different way of, you know, listening and hearing, because literally it's impossible not to be different. I think that's what we were talking about earlier. That's what's great is, you know, true artists are very unique and are able and comfortable in expressing themselves through their music, right? So when you bring that kind of a character to a group of judges, then you're also going to get diverse opinions, you know, and that's a good thing. So when you have 8 different people that are not discussing, right, then there's, you know, a checklist really wouldn't, you know, work so well. And so no, the answer is that there is no checklist, but the point is that you're absolutely right, that there is going to be, really in any competition, a certain amount of subjectivity, even in the Olympics to some extent, you know what I mean? Is that there is some amount of subjectivity involved simply because everyone is unique. Just as much as the pianists on the stage are unique and play completely, every single one of them play very well, but there's different things they bring that as judges we bring different, you know, backgrounds and opinions, and our ears and how we hear things are completely different. Obviously, as you've heard of say, there are going to be some things that I think, you know, all judges will notice, right? And as we said, whether it's somebody who really is striking and moves us in some way, or is it, you know, how they handle different repertoire, you know, there's going to be some things that we all notice, but at the same time, we're going to come to different kind of conclusions. So that's the special part about, and the difficulty about competitions at this level, is that, you know, there's no way around it, and it is, I think, part of just like a career in music, is that, you know, everyone hears music in a different way and they're looking for different things. And so as a competitor, you just have to be, you know, yourself. So anyway, I hope that gives you some perspective.
I have a question from our virtual audience that I think is along these lines. And the question is, are you influenced most by an average interpretation played extremely well, I assume this means technically extremely well, versus a highly artistic interpretation performed with some faults?
Another great question.
Definitely.
All the questions are
definitely
great.
Number 2. Faults. I'm not afraid if a pianist makes a mistake, but you know, everybody makes a mistake. We all make mistakes, and I definitely do not deduct points for a little, you know, stumble. If the piece is played on a certain level, that does not diminish it for me at all. Agreed.
Absolutely.
But also, I'm not a piano teacher. So.
Although I guess another side of that, I remember a student that was doing some smaller competition. I was just telling them this, and it actually connected to that question, which was, you know, the student finished the competition, didn't know the result, and he's like, oh, I made some mistakes, and you know, I said, listen, let me tell you this. People don't notice your mistakes as much if you're moving them. You know, if you have something really powerful to say, and you're really convincing, as she's saying, we simply forget the mistakes. Like you're so into the artist, but if you're not moving me, all I ever seem to notice is the mistakes. I'll be honest. I don't know why it stands out so much. You know, it's like if you're boring, and this is, everyone knows, if you're boring to me or whatever the word is, you're just not telling me something convincing. I just like, oh, there's another mistake. No.
Yeah, I think sometimes we hear our favorite pianists. I know that Nimrod is a big fan of Courtauld, for example. Many of us are probably fans of Horowitz, and sometimes we hear, you know, recordings which are just full of mistakes. Like, oh my God, they would never pass any stage at the Cleveland International Piano Competition. At the same time, they have this magic that just keeps us.
Even studio recordings, they just
Even
keep the
studio
mistakes.
recordings,
It's
yes.
part of the performance.
Yes.
We're only human, right? That's it, literally.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
We can take another question from the audience if there's one. If not, I have some more virtual questions. Okay. So I have another virtual question, which is, to what extent, and I think this connects a little bit to Laura's question earlier, to what extent are you as a judge affected by a contestant's physical display of emotion or a contestant's facial expressions? And obviously, since we have this amazing videography done by Mark Dumm, we are seeing that up close and personal right now.
I'm not, personally, I'm not influenced by that. I'd like to think I'm not influenced by that. I mean, of course, at a certain point, actually, the way the personal way I was listening here was with the score, because it's important for me, even in a piece I know, to read along and to see what is the relationship of the performing artist with the composer. So I tend to many times not even look. So very little, if anything.
I agree.
Well, to me, excuse me, it makes a difference actually, because when I judge or I just appreciate music and seeing artists on stage, I think part of this presentation is very important. Because you have to keep in mind that the audience, when they come to your concert, they're not only there to listen to your music, but also to get the whole message. You're a messenger of the composer, excuse me, transmitting the ideas of this particular work. So also, well, it's my opinion, but judging on my experience, also the confidence on stage, it's something that audience is looking for. So they want to have, their perception of music is different if they see a person on stage that's has a very clear ideas and messages that they transmit to the audience. So when I teach my students, I spend some time with them actually rehearsing their stage presentation, stage presence, because it's really important. And as a result, it gives you, a performer, it gives extra confidence because you know what you're doing and you know exactly what the outcome is going to be in terms of impression that you leave on the audience. Also things like, smiling at the audience when you come on stage, or not rushing through the pieces, certain points, or even how to take off that last chord, or not to take off that last chord, kind of leave your hands on the keyboard so that the music still continues, even though you're not really playing anything else. But that keeps the audience, in that mood. And so there are many different things that you can do to make your stage presentation more striking. So it's important to, that all these little details, they fit within the same journey you're trying to take your audience on. And I would say it has to do with a little bit of acting in a way, but it's not as much, of course, as it would be an opera or, in any play on stage, but it does matter. It does matter a lot, and it gives a performer more clear understanding and confidence on stage, and it gives audience much better picture of what is performing on stage, or being performed. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Is it possible that during your jury careers, you have not included somebody and they've gone on to have wonderful careers? Does it happen often?
It does happen often. You can see it in major competitions sometimes that the second prize winner is the one who goes on to have an international career as opposed to the first prize winner. I can't think of any concrete examples now, but I know it does happen. I don't know if anybody has.
I think it even, I mean, I can speak from, I haven't judged competitions at this level before this one, to this level of a competition. But I know we can all speak even away from being a juror, but just like other colleagues or those that you may know. I mean, there are people who will do a competition and not even make it to the finals. You know what I mean? They don't even make it to semifinals sometimes. Then they do another competition and they do. So in other words, the experiences can vary. And of course, when you think about it for what it's worth, you know, a competition is its own kind of beast because ultimately, you might be a really wonderful pianist, but you might have a bad day, you know, when you do that particular performance. And a judge may know that you have a lot of potential and can hear that you're a wonderful pianist, but if you don't, in that moment, you know, play at your best, it's not really fair to, you know, put you forward or make you a winner when really in that moment, that was your moment to show everything you could and you didn't quite do that. That happens, you know what I mean? So I think that there are times where somebody could be maybe completely overlooked. And then there's times where if you actually could talk to a jury member of a particular competition in which, you know, an example of a pianist that had a big career, they may even tell you, oh, I remember hearing that pianist or, you know, violinist or whatever. And oh yeah, I mean, I could hear the potential there. Like I absolutely could hear how great this person could be, but at that competition, that's not what happened. You know, so those factors, I think, can vary so much. But the sort of final end to that is that, you know, I was thinking about this the other day that like you will see, right, in big competitions where the grand prize or first prize winner, if you follow them, because there's so many competitions and there's a different winner every year or so many years. So, you know, you may follow a particular person and find that maybe they didn't continue a career, maybe by choice, or they just didn't get the opportunities they needed. But that lends itself to what we've touched on a little bit. What does it really mean to be successful fully and have a career in this day and age, right? And no matter what, even though what I really love about this competition, part of that being well-rounded, flexible, they're being pushed to do that here. And that really helps in a lot of ways for like what the world's gonna throw at you. Even then, there are so many steps. There's luck. There's, you know, again, we were talking about there's luck. There's connection that you may meet somebody who gives you an opportunity. I mean, what it means to have a career, it's like a completely different conversation that, unfortunately, not everyone's cut out for that. It's a stressful life. It is. There's a lot to that, and so. Yeah, anyway, I hope that kind of answers your question on some level, but yeah.
Just to touch on that, I think it's very true. One has to remember that, I mean, I cannot speak of my experience as a juror because it's my first time doing that, but a competition is really one platform to, in the early stages of an artist's career. So the decision of the jury doesn't grant you a career. And you can have a career without the decision of the, you know, sometimes there is even a disagreement within the jury, or, you know, there are famous cases of a jury member, let's say in Chopin competition, Ivo Pogorelic, who had an amazing career, who didn't pass to the finals, and then Martha Argerich resigned from the jury, and that was what created the huge buzz about this particular artist. Yeah? So this is also, I think, a nice thing to remember for the competitors, that they're not here to be judged whether they're going to make it or not. They're just using the resourcefulness of this amazing competition to get some kind of visibility, or audibility, I should say. And it's just one path in their career growth.
Marissa, do we have time for one more, or?
Well, so our final question was actually very much related to what you guys were just talking about, which was, what is the value of a competition today in 2021? So I know you guys just kind of touched on that, but I don't know if the other two jurors want to speak to it a little bit as our final question.
Yes, well, competition is definitely a big spotlight for any young musician. It's an opportunity to be heard, as Nimrod mentioned, to be recognized as a young artist. Also, in my personal experience, nothing heightened my professional level more than preparation for a competition. So there are many things come into play, such as acquiring larger repertoire required by the competition. You might not have this in your repertoire before you enter the competition. So you learn new pieces, then the larger competitions, they have at least 3 hours of music you have to perform. That includes, of course, chamber music and some concertos. Sometimes the list of concertos, is something different, so you need to learn a new concerto. And if you're preparing for like a mono-composer competition like Chopin, as my teacher used to say, you have to learn like 4 scherzi out of not just one, but 4, and then we can pick, and you will learn 2 concertos, and then we can pick which one. So she made me do that. Not every single genre, but I had, I have learned several pieces of like 2 ballades instead of just 1, and then 3 or 4 scherzi instead of just 1. So the expansion of your repertoire is one thing. The other thing is that you want to play your best, obviously, during all competition stages, and that, makes you, reach for that standard and, achieve ability to really perform under any circumstances, like being jet lagged, being sick, being sad, or whatever, I personally, when I performed in Chopin competition in Warsaw, I was sick. And that didn't happen on the first stage. So I got sick when I got into the semifinal round, and I was really sick. I had a fever and a full-blown flu. And if it wouldn't be for the rigorous training that my teacher took me through before the competition, I don't think I would perform the same way, because it was really a question of just making it to the stage and being able to perform. So each competition that I did had some contribution into the, the whole thing of me as being a professional. And that extreme situations are like really, really challenging, and they add up to your professional experience and confidence, definitely. So there's 2 things. So expansion of the repertoire, your professional stamina, as well as the spotlight that you get every time you enter the competition, of course.
Well, I think that we all learned a lot today. From our wonderful jury members, and this is also a place to mention our 4 jury members who are not with us here today, and they are Jeremy Denk, Balázs Szokolai, Mira Jevtic, and Noriko Ogawa, who are following the competition with these wonderful videos, and we hope maybe to have them here on a different opportunity. So I think Marissa and I would like to thank all of you and to thank our jury members for this wonderful evening, for this wonderful morning. Yeah. It's so dark here. Yeah. And we look forward to seeing all of you today and tomorrow at 2 p.m. here on this stage for the continuation of the semifinal round. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.